Hemshech Ayin Beis, Volume 1, we're up to Discourse 43. Veschanu Ayin Gimel, said a little close to 100 years ago. And the Frierdiker Rebbe has a Teichen Hascholos HaMaimer for each Maimer. So last Maimer he called Chemet Suda Tikkun Zman. And this one he says Teireh Mamutza, which brings us back to where we are. Where are we at? In chapter 162. Remember, Ayin Beis is a long flow. The Rebbe Rashab has a lot of time, a lot of space to expand on ideas. Whereas as opposed to other Maimorim that have a beginning and an end, this one is more or less like a taste of Ak. L'maylam Zman and Zman. Well, I'll explain in a moment. Because it's a constant flow, it's continuously going, and it's building and building and structure. So, essentially, Ayin Beis is the story of the interface, in very broad terms. Which is really the purpose of all Kabbalah and Chassidus, is a type of portal interface between the divine and existence. And specifically, what we're talking now is the Chof Samach Beis. After explaining Atzilus, he talks about Teireh, using the Zohar Truma Istakel Bar Raisa or Bar Alma. Kutchabrichu Istakel Bar Raisa Bar Alma. The statement itself tells you there are three things. There's Kutchabrichu, source. There's that Bar Alma, the creation, the product, and there's how the source created the product. He did it through gazing into what we call a Raisa, Teireh, a blueprint. An example in Medrash is a blueprint. An architect conceives of the idea, puts it into a blueprint, and then he follows his own blueprint. Which of course begs the immediate question, does God need to do that? So obviously he doesn't need to do it, but that's how he did it. And he's explaining basically what the process is and why. The essential answer is because it's an interface. Interface both from the divine. If the Eibishter said, poof, Yesh Ma'ayin creates a world, okay, can do whatever he likes, but no relationship with this world. The creator and a creature. All we can do is be subjects to that's it. By putting it into a blueprint, he essentially imparted he shared with us his source code, so to speak. Tells us what the world is like. That's the redundancy. The architect read in the blueprint, it says he created Eir. So we have now a stepping stone, so to speak. I mean, the Havdil Teireh is not a stepping stone, but it's a type of interface of God manifesting Himself in a wise, structured way, and in turn, a world is created, which also creates the interface the other way around. That we, through Avodah, are not just subjects like servants to a master. We actually can use this blueprint to stepping stones to get back, and then we can have a relationship. We can have Avos Hashem, Yiras Hashem, Yedias Hashem, and so on. So it's essential to the whole kavanah of Direh B'Tachtenim that we not just be creatures, but we also be partners, so to speak. Shutef l'Hakadosh Baruch Hu b'Ma'aseh Bereishis. Now I'm just using my issues to explain it. So he explained what's the process of Istakel about Kutchabrichu. So Kutchabrichu, he says, is Eir HaSevev Kalam. It's Eir HaMuvdal, the Eir that is Blikvul, that is beyond existence. Istakel Bar Raisa, first he started saying that Raisa Teireh is Chachma Vatzilus, but then he established that it's Chachma of Ak, and along Arichas, what is Ak? Adam Kadmon, he says, is that interface. What is Adam Kadmon? Adam Kadmon is a snapshot of all of existence, and the words that are used here, it's above time, within time. So think of a blueprint. A blueprint, if you were able to have a bird's eye view of all time and space, the bird's eye view, it's one snapshot. It's like looking up from the sky, you see the earth. Include that space, but include time in the picture. So you can see from the beginning of time to the end of the time, it's all one snapshot. In other places he discusses how this is not a contradiction to Bechira and so on. So think of it practically now as not relevant to moral choices. Relevant to all the Mu'rois, everything that would happen from the beginning of time to the end of time is in this snapshot. So is this Skira Achas, on one hand he makes it clear it's above time. Well, let's go the other way. On the one hand, it's clearly a snapshot of all of time. It's not completely outside of it. In other words, in the Teireh, you're going to find details and talks about everything that was going to transpire. On the other hand, you can't call it in time because it's not taking place step by step, or in any form of details. It's in, like he calls it, skira achas, machshava achas. He gave many examples of it. It's like the nefesh is neisa keiches, or the chemer hiyuli that's neisa the daled yisedis. It's basically the ultimate archetype, or the ultimate seed that is that is not yet emerged in the gradations and the hierarchy of time and space as we know it. That's Ak. And now he's going to come back where we are now. I have to explain this at length, many different aspects of it, and explaining that the first four Sfarim of Torah is B'Shlishi HaMedaber, third person, because you're talking about, as he said, what did he call that? He called it Reishis Akab. What do you say? That's Torah that's L'mayla Mizman. Did he say what level that was? Four Sfarim? That's a Chachma Kedum Medak, right? Exactly. So that's when it's spoken in the third person. And Moshe the Mishnah Torah, when he spoke the fifth sefer, Machshava Duma. Ela Dvarim Ashadiber Moshe also begins that he is now talking how the story unfolded in his experience, and that's really outside of Ak. But it's aligned with Ak. Basically, that's how we explain Ela Dvarim Ashadiber Moshe. So basically, the words are Ak is both Zman and Tachas Zman, who's Zman v'lo Zman. So we have ourselves an interface in existence, a klal and a prat, basically. Like other places, other Maimorim will say this interface. Yeah, this interface plays itself out. The klal. I'll just add one other thing to this. In Maimorim, it talks about, not here, how in general time is klal and prat. For example, you have shit alpha shnin. Okay, that's a general, which is really every 1,000 years is a klal. The first 1,000 was chesed, the second was gvura. Within that, you have the 1,000 years, you have the every year. Because every century even. Then you have every year. Every year starts with the Rosh Hashanah, that's koil the whole year. Then you have the months. The Shchodesh is koil everything in the month. The week, everything is koil Nichol and Shabbos. So basically you see Zman is structured in a very orderly way. You don't just begin with something. Everything is that hierarchy. And that helps us also, if you think now, translate Zman into energy. That means the way the divine manifests in existence is in a structured way that we can retrace it. So you're going to jump to Shitaf Shnin, that's Ak. But you can go, connect, for example, your week, or your day. Even your day is also the beginning of the day. And there's Yud-based Tzirufim, the 12 hours of the day, 12 hours of the night. So days break into hours, and hours break into minutes, and minutes into seconds. So technically you can connect every second, not straight to the top, you can actually order. The second connects to the minute. So if you really had an organized life, real-time management, ultimately, every second is ultimately going to connect to its klal, which goes to the next klal, all the way to the first klal. That would mean that your time is aligned with the kavanah. Obviously, we live in time and space, and it's completely random mostly. And we just do whatever comes our way. We live, we call in the here and now. But someone who lives I would say an aligned life is aligning their time is aligned to the purpose of that time. The Alter Rebbe was in prison. He knew it was day and night. They say because of the tzirufim. He sensed it. He sensed the energy. Friday afternoon, the Alter Rebbe would fall asleep because he sensed that was a time of sleep for l'mayla. I mean, that's a person who's completely aligned with the so-called energies.
With the Helig Eruzhin, when he was a kid, he was learning the Gemara. He couldn't understand the Gemara. The Malabit said to his father, "He can't understand." He says, "What does it mean? A person doesn't know Shabbos." He says, "You look up." He said, "It's not Shabbos."
Okay, that's good. Exactly. Rav Hill would fall asleep, would go to sleep that time because he knew that there was that. And the rest of us are sleeping all the time, Friday or Thursday and Wednesday.
So at least on Friday also.
At least we're in the league. We know what sleep is.
Even a broken clock.
That's why we can understand the story.
Even a broken clock is right twice.
That's right. Even a broken clock is right twice. So that way, once a week, yeah. But the whole point of sleep is to awake with fresh energy. So bottom line is that even though he doesn't speak about this man in this context here, because he was just talking about Ak, but think of Ak as the largest klal. What Rosh Hashanah is to the year, Ak is to all time, essentially. to all time and all space. And this is going to become now the explanation of Istaka Baraisa Bara Alma. Don't try to wrap your hand and try to think of that, what is beyond time and space.
I know, I was just saying, we just said what Rosh Hashanah is to the year, Ak is to
all of time. No, it's not just the beginning of something, it's not just the beginning of the year, it's the Reish, Kil. Yeah. It's just
It's a good way to explain Ak.
Yeah, in a microcosm.
In a microcosm, Rosh Hashanah in the year.
Yeah, exactly.
I like it. Very good.
There's a gold competition, right? No, it's good. It's being very well trained. Guys don't know how to write. If they know how to write down what you learn. If you write down what you learn, you remember it. I'm not. I mean, guys here they're masters.
Ak and all time is the macrocosm, and Rosh Hashanah in the year is the microcosm.
Yeah, I mean, there's many jumps in between. The Shitaf, the 1,000 years, the Shemitah, Yovel. Okay, so we learn now inside. So now we're up to this point. Ak is the interface. He's now going to bring it back to Torah. Yeah, it's very geschmack. 10. I mean, it's all like this, but this is a little. Even though it's very complex, but right, it's easy to understand. Essence for the Sagnuzis. It's all a study in Edelkeit. Just remember that. It's all refining our minds and our hearts to think in more refined ways. Not to think in grobe, crass terms of here and now. The mere fact that you think of your second as part of a much more ethereal picture infuses your second with different type of attitude. You know, it's not just a second came and went. It's a second in the. It's a second. It's a breath. It's a divine breath. It's a big different thing than just say, "Oh yeah, okay, it's good." Next time I waste some time, I'm going to think about that. You ever waste some time around here?
If you're thinking about it,
yeah, exactly. People want to kill time. It's a good way. You want to kill time. You want to kill the breath. God wants to breathe, and you want to kill it. Okay, very nice.
Choke.
At least you don't want to say thank you. Don't say thank you. What do you have to kill it? What do you think about that? Avram. Viful Shah's patet min hatog. Collectively. I got in him. Exactly. Wait. I told you. I mean, I'm so moved by this Farkash. They're Jews that learn Torah kol yom kol layla, even today. So there's a Jew that passed away last year. So his son told me his father learned from the beginning. He was a Holocaust survivor. He learned all day, all night. One day he tells his son, "Vuhal the Chabadniks by the Rambam." He wants to start learning the Shiram. His son says, "What's up?" He says, "Sich me befreit 10 Minuten Tag." Verstehst? I just love it. So befreit 10 Minuten Tag.
You're so exact that.
Bei uns ist some people 10 minutes is the question if they have 10 minutes that's taken the talk.
You remember Gabriel
Mazel? Yeah.
Gabriel Mazel.
Yeah.
So I have a 3-minute a day Shulchan Aruch with him. So one time the Rebbe spoke about being Mosif Shiur and Kviyus and L'Torah. So he went to Rabbi Metlik with his little notebook and he showed Rabbi Metlik from the minute he gets up till the time he goes to sleep at night. There's mamish not a free minute. Mamish not a free minute. He has everything ausgerechnet. Dim Rebbe meint Eichus nit Kabus. It's given as a sort.
No, there are. I had a chavrusa like this. Even now in Venezuela, Velebel Shachat. He did not. The guy, not a second, didn't learn. Nittel. So Rebbe Rashab. So Nittel, he went to sleep like 4:30 because it was like Shki at the time. When Seder stopped, everybody went to party, and he went to sleep, and he would wake up at 1 o'clock and fill in with the missed hours. He literally, I remember every little night he would one till the morning. He slept already. That I haven't heard many people do little. Mishpil Shach, the Rebbe said, fine, the Rebbe Rashab, another story.
Even you were taken by that.
No, just interesting hasmada. I used to learn with him the girsa by afternoon. We learned. Don't worry, I made fun of him. He made fun of me. I mean, I asked him, "This a teva? This is mitzadir shemaim." You know, some people have a teva like that. Teva hasmada. Kvetchna bank. It's an art. Veschanan al Havaya. So Shabbos Pasha Veschanan Terag. So we're talking Moshe, talking about Shlishi HaMedaber. This is now Moshe speaking. Veschanan, I appeal to God. So Chizri goes to Veschanan, Lashon Tachanun. How do you translate the Tachana? A prayer. I beseeched to God. One of the most moving pashas. Moshe wants to enter the promised land. So I remember once I taught this pasuk once in this class. So this guy was a travel agent. He should have come to me. I would have got him an immediate ticket. Why did he go to God? And it was very funny. I said 515 prayers. He says 515 prayers. Well, one call to me.
$515 already got me a ticket.
The volcano in Iceland closed Europe. The volcano in Iceland a couple of years ago closed Europe.
Right.
So it wouldn't have helped him to get him a ticket if God didn't want him to travel.
Yeah, I understand. I told him something else. I said there were no travel agents, thank God then. You know. So what did he pray? Beseech Ata Chalesa Laharis Laharis Es Avdecha as Godlecha. You who began to show your servant your greatness, Avra Nova Era. Let me pass. Let me pass into the land and sea. V'tzarech lahav and ma'u inyan ve'era sa'aretz. What it means to see the land. Shalzeh ha'yukol ha'bakosha shel Moshe. This Moshe wanted to see. U'kidush shalei bikish leisha ba'aretz. Moshe didn't go to become a type of like a resident just to live there. Kim lidas ha'aretz. He wanted to see the land. U'ma'in yiriyas ha'aretz. Harbe kol kach bakosha shalzeh. What is the seeing? Shehir kol kach, right? Shehir that they're so intensified, so increasingly many requests. The tough kuf tesvav tefillas is Paul Moshe. Veschanan is gematria 515. He prayed 515 prayers until the Eibishter told him to stop. And what does Avra mean? You know, it's just not, the Torah is not just here telling us technical language. I'm going to pass the river Jordan, pass over. It's telling us something. Avra, he's passing over something, means there's some type of block, impediment. As Godlach. Wasn't negated? Why is he prefaced by saying, I've seen, you've shown your greatness? What would be shortened? Why do you need the whole introduction? In addition, he could have just said Laharis Savdech. What's Achalesa exactly? This means Achalesa is you began. Gama Shom Laharis Savdech. Tzarech Lahav, and the limit soon came B'Sharet Tfilis Shomesh Sheyiyu B'Derech Shiflas Kolkach. You don't find another prayer. What is the expression Laharis Savdech, which is a type of subjugation? Show your servant. We don't find this in the other prayers of Moshe Rabbeinu, that it would be such a type of submission or such a sense of lowliness. So as much as this, even though Moshe was the ultimate humblest man, generally his prayers were in a form of demand. He wasn't tevei. He wasn't just timid about it. He was very demanding. V'kan ema b'derech shiflas, and here he says it as avdecha, like a type of a deep humility, form of humility. Gam asher kosav v'schanan v'lo yomer v'yispalol. What's his the lashon v'schanan and not v'yispalol? Just seems more appropriate. Schana is a special tachana. Okay, so we got our questions. As you know, if you don't know, I'll repeat it again. Ayin Beis was not written with these beginnings initially. They were written one big flow. So if you actually go cut out the beginnings and ends of the Memorim, you actually the Savas Bechinas Seder Zmanim at the top of Shin Mem Beis, and the beginning of Kof Ayin Valpizeh Yuvan. That's how it flew. It flowed.
So the Rebbe set out to bring, and that was it. He just started.
No, he also wrote. Then he wrote before. Usually before, let's say the Shabbos Pashas Chanon. This was already, the text was there. He had, when it came, and then he broke it into Mamorim, and he would just say, and he added a beginning, which makes it even more fascinating, because the beginnings were not even part of the flow, and made that part of the flow. And then he goes and says, he asks questions, and then on that Shabbos he would chazah the Maimon, and then he would say, Allahov and Kol Zeh, Yesh Lahagdim Mashna Zbar Le'il. So these beginnings are the questions. Then there's a piece where he ties it together, he sums up what he said, and then Kufayin is a continuation of where he left off. That's the gist of it. All Hamsheichim are more or less like that. There are Hamsheichim, for example, in Ayin Beis itself, you come to volume 3, you're not going to find any beginning and end altogether. All you have is the first draft. Just one long flow, goes pages and pages, no paragraph breaks, no pictures. I remember that was when you grow into adult, it was one of the big transitions. No pictures. I remember the first time I looked at Samach Vav, I said, what's this? I didn't even know what it was. Someone told me Samach Vav, I said, what? No pictures. Like, we're supposed to read it, like, without, where do you stop? You remember that stage? Suddenly a book becomes without pictures. Maybe make an illustrated Ayin Beis.
Animation.
Again, physics helps because there are certain graphs and pictures that they have.
No, of course, I understand. Well, Eitz Chaim, if you look, there are from time to time an image, not many, but one or two, especially Tzimtzum, there's images that are in there. Rashi also, in Shas. Once in a while, there's images in Erev in different places. I don't know if Rashi made those images, he probably did. Okay. So now you calls Elav and calls Yesh Lahagdim Mashna Zbar Le'il. So this is going to be a summary. To understand all this, one needs to preface that which we learned earlier. The Ak B'chinas Mamutza Beinein and Sofa Elims. What I just summed up. The Ak is the interface between the infinite divine light and the world. Ve'ina Mamutza B'shnei Dvarim. And Ina Mamutza, like a Mamutza means it has to have an interface, needs to have a component from each side. The classic example of a translator, a competent translator, that is. I once had a translator, he only knew one language. So I said, what are you doing here? He came along for the ride.
It was a good pay.
Yeah. The question is, did he know my language or the other guy's language? So what's a mutza b'shnei dvarim? Ha'echad shu mutza b'beis madrega shabai. One thing is that it's an interface in the two levels of it. Remember, we learned Pnimi Yisak v'Chitzeni Yisak. So Ak itself has two levels. Pnimi Yisak, as we learned, the beginning is Pnimi Yishabai Ureishis Akav Shekadugmas Atik. So let's think first technically, then we'll explain it. The Pnimi of Ak, so to speak, is Bedugmas Atik, the top of the Kav that's bringing down divine energy. So it's representing essentially the divine side of things. And the second part of Ak, so-called the outer dimension, becomes the klal, like he spoke about Arich. That's Atik and Arich becomes the klal. It becomes that snapshot of all of existence. So the example, a very simple example, would be you have, let's say, the grand architect, the cosmic architect. It's his grand vision, existence. He articulates that to his closest chief of staff, who just represents everything this Grand Master wants. Afkamina, whether this chief, so-called chief of staff, conveys it now to the top, let's call it foreman of this particular project. So the chief of staff, all he's doing is conveying the king wants. He wants a world. You go figure it out. That one, the second, it answers to him. So you have basically one is reflecting what the source wants. The other one goes and hires all his, and he follows the blueprint. And that's the klal to the world. So you go to the first guy, he says, don't get me into the details, all I want is a building, that's it, I want the structure. The second one is already closer and commensurate to the workers, or the department heads can go back to him and say, hey, tell me this, tell me that. In other words, he's a relationship. It's still a klal. He's not an individual worker, he's not Atzilas B'ri Yitzirah. It's ak. But it's Chetzeni is ak, so it's the klal. I mean, in each of us, we have these steps. Anytime you conceive of an idea, there's the outline you create. But before there's the outline, there's almost the vision. Like the vision statement would be Primi Yasak, and the mission statement would be Chetzeni Yasak. Maybe that would be an example. So the vision is far more connected to the, you really want to get back what exactly is what do you really want? That's the vision. The mission would be, the technical blueprint. How are we going to do this? The tactical plan, so to speak. You can use that as an example. I mean, they're all examples. They're not exact, obviously, but it's important to find within yourself these levels, or else it becomes just an abstract exercise in futility. So it's important to find it within us. So that's Primis and Chetzeni Yisak. Fine. That's one aspect how it's a mamutza. Habeiz. He's summing up the whole previous maimer. Habeiz shu mamutza be'inin hisavus. So this, what I just said, Primi Yisak is not hisavus. Primi Yisak is conveying, if you remember, more Eid Ein Sof, which was the second thing he spoke about. But the primary thing he spoke with, ak is a mamutza in the hisavus, in the form of creation. The hisavus el mesubchin is klal, basically item 2. What he just said, Primi Yisak Chetzeni, is in Chetzeni Yisak itself, there's also mamutza, which is hisavus, which is that it's a form of a klal. The hisavus el mesubchin is klal o prat. The creation of the world is in the form of, how do you translate klal and prat? I keep saying all-encompassing and the general details. Specific. General and specific. But there must be klal means like a general category, a subcategory. What's the opposite of a subcategory? A mother category. What do we call it? When we do a hierarchy even for
folder in a file.
Yeah, it is like that. Yeah, but you wouldn't say folder in a file. But like Ovis Malach is told when you have, when you have like the parent category and the subcategories. When you make an outline, so the parent is the ultimate, like a parent, the ultimate parent category. Yeah. How do you translate B'chlal? When you learn even in English, Klal and Prat. What do you say? Or in Chumash, not Chumash, in Siddur, you say Klal, the Yud Gimel Midah Shater and Zeshus. How do they say? The general principle and the specific principles.
Particulars.
And Ak is the state of that all-encompassing level of the worlds. So here's the example to Rosh Hashanah. It's not just the beginning of the process. Not just the beginning of Mitzias, the beginning, like the first emerging. A seed is not just the beginning of the tree, it's also encompasses. It's a klal that encompasses everything that will emerge afterwards. That was the second half of it. However, the way it's encompassed there, it's not in the form of Mitzias. It's not like a treasure chest that has all the objects in it. They're just in a box, all in one place, and then you separate them. It's like someone comes home with a reward, with gifts for everybody. So it's in a bag, and he just gives them out. In Ak, they're in an amorphous state. They're in a nebulous state. And that is what entails the mamutza. So one mamutza is between Eid Ein Sof and the worlds. Primi Yisak Chetzeni. The other is the mamutza that Ak, when it applies itself to the worlds, it's a klal. So even in what he called Chetzeni Yisak, there's also mamutza. It's two levels. The general mamutza of Ak, and there's a specific. Yeah. In his boy, explain Be'inyan Hazman, the Kol Shmash Nesava Kol Tachas Hazman. Explain the concept of time, that everything that emerged, everything that created, everything is governed by time, under the rules of time. Tachas Hazman. And the Ak, you cannot define time as we know it, because there's no Metzias there. And nevertheless, it's not completely beyond time, because at least it's one image. It's skirachas. Yes, it's not time as we know it, but it is an image of it all. Snapshot. So we see from this that Ak is both time and beyond time. I find it very comforting when the Rebbe Rashab says it, so we don't have to say it. He says it, Klal Dibura, Beide. I like it because it's about becoming comfortable with paradoxes. I told somebody you can't really understand Chassidus until you get married, because that's the only time you start understanding paradoxes. You live in one dimension. Is that right? Avram, Maskim. These are paradoxes, yeah? You get to be at peace with paradoxes, you're alright. Nothing can bother you. So I always tell people, I said, just say, how do you explain it? I said, just be at peace with paradox. It'll solve a lot of problems. Now you have to be metavach everything.
Not everything has to make sense.
Maybe that's the sense. Or, yeah. Anyway. And that's why it's an interface between the infinite divine light that's completely beyond time, beyond even the category of time, and between the creation of the worlds, that's Atzilus, the order of time, as man as it's in Biyah, all the way down to our universe. Interesting way he puts the whole summation. In the Maimer, he went the other way. First he started with Chitzeni Yisak and then the Pnimis.
Even now that we learned about both things.
No, I understand. No, it's good. It was very good. I'm just saying it's interesting because now he says he's going back to Mamutza Ben Ein Social Mal Megeder Azman. Is that also? Then even Chitzeni Yisak is also a shtickle Mamutza from L'mayel Megeder Azman. But remember, we learned that Atik is L'mayel Megeder Azman. The Pnimius Ak is L'mayel. Okay. In other words, Ak Pnimius is from Ein Sof and Chitzeni is that, and Chitzeni Yisak connects Pnimi Yisak. Yeah, good. V'apizeh Yuvan, now chapter 170. V'apizeh Yuvan, according to this, we'll understand Mashakasa B'Zayar. He's going now back. If you want to know where he started, this Kuf Samach Beis. It's chapter Kuf Samach Beis, beginning of the Maimer of Maseh. Started this whole Zayar. So now he's going back to it. Okay, this is B'Chesed. We've had 40, 50 chapters till you get back to it. So here, all we got to do is memorize around 30 pages. To be exact, 40, Chavdala to Mem Gimel, 20 pages, sorry. Right? So it's easier to remember 20 pages than it is 50, 60 pages. So now, Pizeh Yuvim will understand what it says in Zayhar, right? Kutchabrichis Taka Baraisa Bara Alma. We've been quoting you the shapeless mass, right?
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Yeah. But here's more shapeless potential mass.
Yeah.
Shapeless archetypal mass.
Yeah.
It's more complicated. We have the Hagdara Mufshetis, an abstract categorization, which the Ched is an opposite. Categorization is not abstract, but it's an abstract categorization. Okay? So he says, Kutchabrichu is takal baraisa bara alma. So all these three levels. Kutchabrichu looks into Torah, gazes into Torah, and creates the world. What does he go here? So Araisa he begins Chochmah da'ak. Good. Araisa is Chochmah of Ak, the wisdom of Ak. So even though you're going to go into it, but Ak itself has levels. The wisdom of Ak is, in other words, the image of Ak. While Torah ksiv, the Al HaTorah rather, the Al, because on Torah it says Kashayim Moshel Kadmeni. You see, this goes back. Kuf Samach Beis, he brought it. Moshel Kadmeni means Torah is the primordial metaphor, right? That was the original Moshel Kadmeni. Shehi Moshel Ein Seif Kadmeni Shalel. What does it mean, Moshel Kadmeni? So the pastors, it means literally when we say Moshel Kadmeni, I think it's a Mishlei. It says Moshel Kadmeni. Is it a Mishlei thought? Yeah. So Moshel Kadmeni, you could say, means the first Moshel ever. So he says no, it's a Moshel for Kadmeni Shalel. It's a Moshel for a metaphor for Ein Sof, for the one that precedes the world, meaning the first cause. The Kamoy HaMoshel Lavush Ala Nimshul, just like an example, a metaphor. is a garment for the moral, which is the nimshal. You have a better translation for nimshal than moral?
Analog.
It's the worst.
The analog?
The correct term is analog, and it doesn't work because nobody knows what analog is. Analog, digital.
Right, exactly.
It's one of my. When I find it, Bli Neder, I'll tell you, but I've been looking for it for years.
The emphasis on Bli Neder? The emphasis on Bli Neder?
Yeah, no, I just can't find it. It's just.
Okay. But so he's moral. Moral is fine. The moral of the example. Moral, not as in the moral, the lesson.
Instead of saying an analogy, say a metaphor, and a moral is better than saying an analogy and an analog.
Okay, but we could say analogy and analog. We're intelligent people. Maybe we got to assimilate that word. An analogy and analog, metaphor and moral. Okay.
You have to popularize the word analog.
Okay, we'll work on it.
Because there's no other word.
We'll work on it, and I'll get my brother involved, and then we'll have it become a... This is a whole conspiracy here. Sticking in new words. I remember I once gave a talk, it was in Florida, and it was years ago, maybe Tafshin Nun, what would that be, 23 years ago. And I was translating a lot from what I learned. So, and the guy comes over to me and says, the word you were looking for was integrate. So that became, integrate, right, that's a great word. I was talking about like mechaber zayin, so I was connecting, uniting, all these so-called primitive translations of fusion. So then I developed an integrate. It was a very good word. I use it a lot. Integrated circuits.
Integrate and discriminate.
Yeah. No, words are precise. I mean, the key thing with words is not so much the word, is that the word should resonate with the audience. That you're not using a word that's ridiculous.
That's why analog doesn't work.
Yeah, because people don't really understand. I got it. You have to use the words that resonate, right? So it's levushal. So just like a mashal is levushal and imshal, it's a garment. Because that's really, the word. It's a garment. It's a garment for the nimshal, because the nimshal is an idea. It's an idea that's not so graspable or palatable to our terms. So the example becomes its garment, which is how you can be teifus, you can handle. It's a handle, a way to hold it. The same way.
A handle and an object.
Okay.
A mashal and a nimshal.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a literal translation, but it would be yeah. There's no problem. I always tell this to anyone teaching. I said you don't have to. English is not Hebrew. Hebrew can be one word, meaning 10 words to explain one word in Hebrew. You don't have to be bashful. You have to get the idea across. You don't have to find necessarily obviously you want to choose the best possible word, but there's some words that are not. Mamalaklam, Sevaklam, you're not going to say filling the worlds and surrounding the worlds. You're going to have to use other words if you want to convey the idea. So anyway, so it begins Chochmah Da'ak. See, these are very powerful lines because it gives you the exact translation of what means Moshel Kadmeni, what is Ak. So Ak, the wisdom of Ak is a garment, meaning the handle, the analogy, the metaphor for Erein Sei Baruch. It's a way for us to relate to Erein Sei Baruch. The truth is, we learned earlier that all of the levels in Shtalshus are Mishalim, basically. They're each one a relative metaphor for the higher level, for a lower level to hold on to. Because these levels are basically, they're all Mishalim. They're not, tangible physical realities. They're states of being.
I was about to explain what's a mashal and what's an imshal.
Good.
So then,
beautiful. There's a chapter then that has to go hand in hand. A very, very Seder chapter, Meir chapter. I love that chapter. It's on the right side. Remember, I pointed it out, where he explains the concept of a mashal pichsidus. Meir. Just if you have any chance.
it was also kind of like very recent.
Yeah, remember where that was? It was like
you said that the thing itself is the title goes down. That's the mashal.
Yeah, it's made the
Read
piece.
notes about what a mashal is.
Does anyone remember where it was?
On that.
It was like time is very relative. We're finding out not so long ago. Depends who you're talking to.
What?
Yeah, right here. Chapter Kuf Mem. It's one of those chapters I marked down is really important to learn.
What page?
Page Reish Ayin, to 270.
Ein Rish.
Hamoshel hu animshal mamish. That's what he says there, basically. It's a lakus dressing up in another level for us to. It's a very powerful piece. But to speak about moshel is probably very similar to that. Okay, let's go back here. So now the diuk. Why diuk moshel kadmeini? It's also a diuk to say it's called an example, a metaphor, is to indicate that the infinite divine light that manifests a chachma v'ak is not just a reflection. It's a atzmi. It's a core energy. Now he's going to explain. Yeah, this is very relevant to that chapter. So what's the beauty of an example? I don't want to say the Havdil, one of the most powerful physicists, by the way, who explained physics, some of the deepest concepts. But he had this uncanny way of finding examples that are like, daily examples from things that were was Richard Feynman. He's a Jewish physicist, Richard Feynman. I learned a lot of things in communication from him. He had this depth of understanding abstract ideas that he could find an example that anyone could relate to and show you that abstract idea in it. So it didn't necessarily make it easier it doesn't suddenly become clear, but you have something to think about, because the problem is there's nothing to hold on to. It's an abstract idea. Either you get it or you don't get it. When you have the example, you could at least start dissecting, like we say, for example, I think that's a critical component in explaining Chassidus. The example has to be two sides to it. It has to be an example that you and I relate to, or else it defeats the purpose. But it has to be something that is not too grub. Like I remember one Mashpia teaching us the difference between Eir and Shefa. He said Eir is like like milk, and Shefa was like ketchup. So children, that's the image you get. So I kept thinking every time I saw Shefa, I thought of ketchup, which is not the point. He technically.
It took years to unravel that, right?
No, I went back to him later and I said to him, I have one question to you. Instead, why did the Rabbeim not think of this beautiful example?
They didn't have ketchup.
Right, that's the point. Ketchup.
I have a question.
So they had molasses.
How do you explain Stephen Hawking's? I say atheist. He's shaykh. How is shaykh? How is a shaykh?
I don't think. Listen.
A genius. Versteht. Aber it's an atheist. How is it possible? It's a student.
He's an atheist. He's at a very high level.
No, that's because believing is Machayev and he's not interested.
That's my one possibility. Remember, belief has nothing to do with science. He probably grew up in a home of atheists or something like that. It's nothing to do with his science. If he was not a scientist, he'd still be an atheist. That's independent of his science. I've never seen only Richard Feynman, by the way, said something that he was always a believer until he started seeing the vastness of the expanding universe.
And
then he stopped believing. You know why? And it's odd. I'll tell you why. He says, so much waste of space. Why would God create interesting? Says, why would God create something we're never ever going to experience? So I wish I had met him, because I think we learned in Ayin Beis, Mashma, the answer is a little Adrab, but that's it. When Ein Sof manifests in Gashmi, it's like that. It's taka beyond you. That's the whole point of it. Because by him it was like if he was an efficient God, why make such a big living room? For whom? It's interesting how. By the way, such a Nishmaiman is good to talk to, because he's a thinking person at least. And the question is, you need to know Chassidus. That's a whole other discussion about atheism and so on. The only one I ever saw, Aldous Huxley, is the only one that actually gave that disclaimer where it says, I am invested in no God, because then I don't have accountability, especially in my areas of my sexual life. And from there, all my theories flow from there. See, at least he's transparent, That I liked. I wrote once an article. Same thing with religious people. If everyone just state your axioms, you're supposed to state your, recuse yourself, whatever. You're supposed to, full disclosure. Say it. I always say when I speak, especially to groups that are very secular, I always say, I grew up in a religious home. I don't hide that. I said, a traditional home, I wondered many years of my life. There's no question it shaped my thinking. I cannot say I'm objective thinker. No, everything's objective. What do you mean? I grew up with certain things. I only eat milk and meat. It repulses me, not because I'm so religious, because it's by me, culturally repulsive. I don't deny that. First of all, it creates much more credibility. You're stating the facts. It's true. Then, doesn't mean you're stuck there. It means, once you state that, now the question is, can I explore? And we try to explore as best as we can. But if everyone said that, we'd have a lot less problems. Most people, it's cultural. It's what they grew up with. Most people don't believe. It's like the Judaism they're exposed to. You wouldn't believe it either if you were exposed to it. Go to such synagogues and you find out it's ridiculous how it's presented. Why would you believe something that's presented in a ridiculous way? Well, Levitzu Baditzer said, the God you don't believe in, I also don't believe in. Huh? Yeah. Look, most of it is cultural. It's very little of it is really believers and unbelievers. I don't know Hawkins. I don't know him personally. You have to look at his life. I've read Christopher Hitchens and this Stephen. I know Stephen Hawking, not Stephen. Stephen. What's his name? Dawkins. Richard Dawkins. I don't know, radical. Sam Harris is a Jew. I read this book. The end of Hitchens was Aid.
Two brothers.
Oliver Shalom. Mother was Jewish. Yeah. The Rebbe Rashab once said that the atheists are one step closer to the truth than the believers. Because when they say God doesn't exist, it's much more real than we say God exists. We mean God exists like you exist. But see, his built Nimtza is obviously.
What he said?
He said, Bapa. In our days, the Mashpim would tell us, don't chazer it over. I see nothing wrong with chazering it, actually. It's a very geshmak. He's not saying that they're right. He's saying that the one that could, don't think when you say it exists, is that you know what God means exists. It means, and it's a complicated subject, but I don't find it to be an issue. Even look, if once you get into any type of like so-called passionate arguments about things that become personal. But if you're somewhat detached, and I always tell this to scientists I know, I'd say they don't believe. I said, the fact of the matter is, you benefit from it, right? So if you're a scientist that works for a pharmaceutical firm, you have to reveal that, because you benefit from your conclusions. The conclusion is no God, you have benefit from. Scientists hate when you tell them this, because they consider themselves objective. I said, you benefit from these results. I benefit? You could say I benefit from results that there is a God. I have no problem with that. But don't tell me you're coming with you're vested in the results. And frankly, also, listen, no God is far more convenient. It's no responsibility. Who wants it? Since when do we love responsibility anyway? We understand it. You want it once you understand its importance. It's not like have the bafked and nichalai. Anyway, so going back to Moshel. That's what he wants to say. So a Moshel is not just. That's why I brought about Feynman. A Moshel, you'll see a master of Moshelim. You say Shlomo Melech v'Yimshel Shleishus Alof Moshel. He was able to come up with 3,000 metaphors. So besides what Chassidus says that it wasn't 3,000 different examples, it was 3,000 levels, which is b'chlal mind-boggling. You can speak to 1 level, 2, 3 levels below a kindergarten child, 3,000 levels. But the chachma of a moshel, and that's why you'll see a person who knows how to conceive of a moshel understands the idea far deeper than someone who can't. Is not that he's a creative guy. Ketchup or whatever comes your way. That the moshel is kafte v'ferach. It's like a hand in a glove, like a lavush that you could hold on to. It's a real glove to hold on to the hand. And the more you dissect it, the more you see its similarity. At the same time, it still has those qualifications. It's a davar zar. It's obviously of a different paradigm, or else it wouldn't serve a purpose. And there's always the qualification that a moshel may not be daimel and nimshel, exactly like in every aspect. So this is what it says. So Meili is saying that once you call a moshel kadmeni or moshel mahava nimshel, the moshel the muchus of the nimshel, the metaphor, the moral, or the analog. Let's try it out. Manifest in it. The only thing it's concealed within it. It's the muhus of the nimshel, or else it doesn't serve it. Then that's not a mushal for it. We always have one question within. Sometimes mashal and machsidis end up being that the mushal is harder to understand than the nimshel. That's another story. But
the Rebbe asked the question: if the marshal is used to explain the nimshal, assuming that the marshal is easier to understand. So how can something that comes from something which you don't understand explain something which you don't understand?
Marshal is Gashmi. You could work on it. You could figure it out.
And the answer is?
I think if I remember, I know what Peggy said. He said that the marshal comes from a higher place in the nation.
Yeah.
And then it descends.
Yeah, this is from Terer. Terer, he says, is beferish. Yeah. Well, yeah. But it's taken from the Alter Rebbe. Look, the point of Barak is, it's like Talmidim. If you have to explain something to a student that's a beginner, you have to dig a lot deeper and understand a lot better than to someone that's like, that, you know. Because you have to then, look, that's the best Even HaBeichen if someone understands Chassidus. I tell this always to Bochum. They come to me. I said, simple as this: can you explain Mamala Kalam, Sevel Kalam, and Atzmus to someone in the street that doesn't know this language? You can't rely on any crutch. If you can't do that, you don't really get it. Atzilus, even a Rebbe. Tell me, what's a Rebbe? Coming to Gimel Tam, what's a Rebbe? So, by us, a Rebbe right away evokes all our feelings of a Rebbe, whatever it is. But if you can't say it, I'm not saying you don't get it, but you don't get it quite the same way. If you give good examples of a Rebbe, and but you also have to be careful the other way around. The Rebbe in Tafshin Yud, he told the story that they had a group of college students came to see him. I think it was like Beimer Tafshin Yud. The Rebbe says the story, or Beizir, one of those days. And he says they asked him many questions. The last question was, they asked him, "What is a Rebbe?" So the Rebbe started explaining what a Rebbe is, and he says they took out their notepads and they started jotting. And they walked out of the room. The Rebbe said, I thought to myself, no, yet haben sie ein Papier in the Rebbe. Now they have a paper Rebbe. You know. So that's the other way around, where you become so technical. It's bridging it in a powerful way. We know the powerful. You have to think to yourself, it's an art. I think it would be a great skill to be taught, a tool in shivas, to teach children, to teach students, how do you develop a metaphor? Take an idea, give us a metaphor. That's actually a very good idea to do. Like, metaphor. In my work, what I do, it's always trying to convey invisible things into visuals, because people relate. So, like, you want to convey infinity. So, infinity is the ocean. Stand by an ocean all night. It's not, but it gives you a taste of relentless energy, that type of thing. Or everybody can relate to the face of a child, or a teardrop, a flower. Nature is the best metaphor for anything, because it evokes emotions. A child, innocence, purity, and these are really the best metaphors. The best metaphors are nature. They're gewaldic, because everyone can relate to it. People know what do you feel like when you see a beautiful sunset? It's conveying something more than just the image. It's conveying a sentiment, and so really the sunset is a mashal for whatever it is it's communicating. If you could look at things like that, it's a whole different way. It's like Psari Achzalakah. Everything works this way. That's where the Mashalim of Chassidus, in Yonash Teres Chassidus, the Rebbe writes this, that the Mashalim are Elokus Bislapshus. That's really what it is. It's not a separate metaphor. That's a fine example for that. It's that on this level. That's what he's saying. Okay.
That's what he said for Flamosa.
Yeah, right. Here it is. Okay, so here we go. I love this when he gives an example from a tzimtzum aparsa to understand what a moshel is. The Rabbeim, that's what they do. They give an example to understand this with a moshel poshet. Remember, we were studying once by Yale. We're talking politics, we're talking about some politics. So Yale says, okay, genug mit das, lass mir reden etwas praktisch. So I said, what praktisch? He says, Eiden Moyer. I've got to like bulb with cold kind of things. Let's talk about something practical. Eiden Moyer. That's an interesting twist. Okay. Yeah. So what did we say? The difference between tzimtzum and parsa? So technically, tzimtzum means concealment. Parsa means a curtain. The tzimtzum tzimtzum is the removal. You can say the complete concealment. Siluk technically is from the word istalkus. Siluk means it left. Here, obviously, we know in Tzimtzum it's not Mokum Gashmi, like he says in Tanya. So Siluk means complete removal, as if it's completely disappeared. You could say like it's gone inward, like a turtle. I know that's a good mashal, a turtle. No, that's like the ketchup. It's not a good mashal. I'm just thinking like a turtle. It's when you say something contracts within to itself. There's a word for it. There's like
introvert.
Not introvert. No. There's a it
implodes.
Implodes, like yeah.
Oh.
But not so much as an implode. It's like going into Tzimtzum. That's siluk. Because the light, the energy completely was removed or concealed. So what comes out of the tzimtzum? Only a reflection, because the core energy has been concealed. Parsa is a curtain, what do we call it? An opaque curtain.
I don't think if the aura is siluk, how can you have a whole aura coming out of it? It's gone. So where did the aura come from?
He means what comes afterwards, like the kav, let's say. In other words, think of this: a teacher has infinite wisdom. He conceals it all, withdraws it, contracts it, in order to leave space for the student, and then it begins to transmit. So that transmission would be a reflection. Yeah.
Only because it's not infinity? Only because it's not as infinite wisdom?
Because why would it require siluk? If it was lefi erech.
Because the amount was too much.
Okay, so fine. So that means whatever comes afterwards is just
really a part of the Ein Sof that
look at the parsa. You'll see by contrasting it to the curtain. You'll understand in a second. Aval parsa hu shemechusa er misalam bay. Parsa is a curtain. So how does light go through a curtain? It's diffused. It's diminished. We put up a curtain. We're not talking about those curtains that are complete blackouts. A curtain will make less light, less glare, but it doesn't sound a complete concealment. Ha'ara would be an example of you stop the flow. Those curtains in like hotel rooms, they have the two types of curtains. There's curtains you close it, it's like mamish night, all day. It blocks out everything. That would be like a tzimtzum b'derech siluk. So anything that does come through, not because it comes through. If you, let's say, open it afterwards, it'll just be it's not really a good example for the second half. But bottom line, it's completely blacked out. So anything coming to this side is going to come from a complete reflection. It would be like having a reflection. Where a parsa would be a curtain that is not as that total opaque. Is that what it's called? Total opaque. Totally.
Blacks, everything is opaque.
That's opaque, yeah. But it's translucent, so it's like more like frosted glass type of thing. The light will go in, but it's going to come far weaker. That's what he's saying. So the Mehusa Eir is there. Ha'ara here would mean that you need a jump. It's like a quantum leap. You can't get it directly, so you have to stop the direct flow and then get some type of reflection. Levana is a Ha'ara, for example. Levana is a Ha'ara, not a parsa. You see, the Levana completely changes the sunlight. You can stare at it all the time. It doesn't have it's not diminished sunlight. It's a reflection, complete reflection. That would be a good example. One example.
It says you shouldn't stare at the moon. Doesn't it say you shouldn't?
Yeah, for other reasons. But I'm saying you could technically. To say it doesn't have the glare. Yeah. Well, we were taught in camp, I remember that if you stare at the moon 18 minutes in a row, you're going to end up climbing toward it and not go until you fall off a tree. So the little kafir I am, Mishnah decided one night I'm going to stare at the moon for 18 minutes. I told my friends, they said, don't do it. And I lost all my faith after that. I realized, I'm just kidding. There's these guys that say they did something, and if God doesn't strike with lightning, it means I did do it, and I can tell you it's not true. I didn't go mad.
There's no trees around.
You think you did.
You're right. That's good, very good. But I think I was mad before that. Can a madman go mad? That's the shayla. Really? That makes him normal, or he goes crazier?
Too negative, positive.
Right. A madman can go mad, and does that make him back normal, or it's just dargis and mishagas? Okay. You took from experience, I see.
So, sicher.
No, you say it with such authority. It's good to be a madman from time to time. Shtus the Kedusha. Okay. So that's the Parsa. The Parsa is a moshel. That's what he's going to say there.
Look at the way we live.
Yeah.
You think that we're not all crazy?
Yeah, but we don't have to talk about it. No, we can talk about it at time to time, but you gotta, those that don't know yet, you gotta keep it. Everyone's laughing. We all feel the same way. You didn't think I think that too? It's very comforting to find out that and we're all in silence.
Company,
yeah. Yeah. You too. Okay, so that's Parsa. Shemusa er misalam bay. U'kamaya moshel shemusa animshel mislabish. That's the Terer. The Terer is using Parsa to explain what a moshel is.
Okay.
Right, there we go. The moshel shemsam. So what would be the example of tzimtzum? So if you remember, he spoke tzimtzum would be... now that was also Parsa. Tzimtzum would be like a chida. He speaks about a chida, a riddle. A riddle is already more removed than an example, than a metaphor. So I believe he speaks about a riddle as being the Parsa Lifnei Atzilus or something. Because AC is built in Mesudaris. I'm just trying to think what's an example for something that is not... That's like what would be a tzimtzum conveying of an idea. Not an example, not a riddle. It would have to be like a real, the deepest, there's a Ramazim, like... Yeah. I have to think about it. I'm not sure, but I think there are examples of Chassidus. Maybe. There must be examples of Chassidus for, example is an example. A riddle is even for a deeper seichel that can't be conveyed directly, so it's a riddle. Chidus.
That's like letters mixed up.
Anagram, like a riddle. What's a riddle? It's like it's a question, or that's. Okay. Anyway, the point is understood. Similarly, is Chachma the wisdom of Ak. It manifests within it the core of Ein Sof, like a moshel to an imshel. Look earlier, chapter 137. What do you say there? Interesting.
That's just not where it is. It explains about the riddles and the...
No, I don't think so. What was Kuf Lamed Zayin? Oh, don't ask. Yisrael Saba Tfuna. Yeah, Mashla Kadmeni. Talks about Mashla Kadmeni.
He says right here, Mashake Parsa, and Musa Elim Slabish and Salam Bapasa.
Yeah, that's what he talks about here. But it's interesting, the parentheses is after he mentions Ak, and that chapter doesn't mention Ak. The Cheder, this parentheses belonged when he spoke about like a line before the Kamoy came. The Cheder. Okay, I have to look up why he put the parentheses here. See what I'm saying? Because there's... Okay, V'zeu Kutchabrichas talk about Isa Bar Alma. Where are we here? Yeah, this is the meaning that the Kutchabrichu, that the God, Kutchabrichu is who's tackle about Isa looks into the Torah. The Kutchabrichu b'chinas Atzmus Ein Sof. The Kutchabrichu is the level of Atzmus Ein Sof. B'chinas kedugmas atik shalamay lamaylam b'chinas haklal da'ak. Like he said, it's a word from Eitz Chaim. Eitz Chaim says, just like there's an atik that's prior to that Atzilus and microcosm, there's a keser of Atzilus. So there's an atik, he says, ke'ein atik al galgalta, above the skull of Ak. So there's a similar level to atik. We discussed it earlier. The bottom line, this level is like it comes from Malchus of Ein Sof. It's a level that connects to the Kav that comes from before the Tzimtzum, basically. So he says, we said that's completely higher than time. That level, in other words, Kutchabrichu is higher, very much higher than the encompassing dimension of Ak. For who is Takal on that level, Kutchabrichu, Atik rather, Atzmas Ein Sof, is a stakel baraisa. He looks into Shehu b'chinas ak er kloli v'aytezeh bara alma. So you have that level of eir, of the kav, or what he calls atik, looks into the Torah, and through this he creates. So you have right there 3 levels here. You have atik, or kutshe b'richu l'shon of zeir, stakel baraisa, ak, right, and bara alma, the world that come from it. Like I mentioned before, like the blueprint. Should we stop here? Yeah, because it looks like it goes down to the whole thing. Yeah, let's stop here. So we did the opening, the beginning of chapter 170. We did pages 343 in the middle of 344.